everybody, and welcome to the U.S. Center. Feel free right now to put on your headphones. It'll sound so much nicer. Although you can probably hear everybody. But either way, put on the headphones. You should already be on. Position the headphones. Just raise your hand. We'll help you out. Excited for our first event here of week 2, kicking us off. The GLOBE program, building youth environmental literacy towards a sustainable future.
All right, thank you, Tom, and good morning, everyone. I'm Kate Calvin. I'm NASA's Chief Scientist and Senior Climate Advisor. Thank you for joining us bright and early this Monday morning to talk about GLOBE. GLOBE stands for Global Learning and Observation to Benefit the Environment. And I'm joined here with Lauren Gibson Noah. So, Lauren, introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, good morning. Yes, thanks for joining us right after a rest day here at 9 a.m. My name is Lauren Gibson, and I work as NOAA's Policy Advisor on Youth Engagement. So my role is trying to bring more youth voice into what we do here as an agency.
Excellent. So we're going to talk about one program that NASA and NOAA work on together. So I'm going to start by just giving a little bit of an overview of GLOBE, and then Lauren's going to help me provide some concrete examples of what GLOBE does. So GLOBE is led by NASA and supported by NOAA, the National Science Foundation, and the Department of State. The program began in 1995, and since its beginning, it's reached 42,000 schools, 51,000 educators, over 880,000 students, and over 280,000 citizen scientists. And those together have contributed over $250 million of environmental observations to GLOBE's open access database. So we're reaching a large community and bringing Earth observations into the open domain. GLOBE outlines a data collection methodology that's complemented by educational materials. These freely available education materials have been translated into multiple languages. So students from kindergarten through college, as well as members of the public, can collect data that's used with scientists in conjunction with satellite data. So we can blend these observations by citizens and learners with data that we collect from our satellites up above Earth to help us better understand Earth systems. Start by talking a little bit about how GLOBE fits into both of our agency's missions. And so from NASA, GLOBE is collecting ground-level observations. And a lot of the work we do at NASA is looking at Earth from space. But when you really want to look at and understand it, you want to combine those two different things. So I want to start by showing a map of where observations are. So this is a map of all of the data that is submitted to GLOBE in the last year. So we have more than 250 million environmental observations in the GLOBE database. And scientists can use this in conjunction with what we see from above and help us better understand what's happening. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how this fits into NOAA's work.
Yeah, of course. So similar to NASA, at NOAA we have, powerful scientific tools to help us understand how our Earth system works. GLOBE and NOAA really share a common mission. We're both using observation to understand our various elements of our Earth system, from ocean to climate to our coasts. And NOAA is doing that at kind of this global scale, similar to NASA. We are trying to use our tools to understand how we can take decisions at the national and global scale. And the tools that we're often using are pretty expensive. They're high-tech, they're high precision, which is fantastic. But we don't have that kind of local level data on the ground. And that's kind of where GLOBE and other citizen science or participatory science programs come in. So GLOBE is also taking these observations of our Earth system, but at a very, very local scale, and that's really important to NOAA. So as you can see here, one example of how we're using this is through a system called MATIS. So we are combining, like Kate said, kind of this large-scale, high-tech data collection with this on-the-ground local observation from programs like GLOBE and other community and participatory science efforts to really get that level of detail on the ground of how weather phenomena are impacting local communities. So we can actually feed the data collected from GLOBE into the system called MATIS. There's quality control, there's some sifting processing, And that can eventually feed into this meteorological community, including National Weather Service. And we can make better predictions of what is happening at the local scale using this data that's coming in from folks on the ground, which I think is really exciting. It's cool to be able to combine our satellite data, our weather monitoring at this national and global scale with this really detailed on-the-ground information that we're getting from community members.
No, that's great to hear, and it's great to see the weather example. And I want to follow up a little bit more and talk a little bit about local communities. Can you give some examples of how Globe works in the local community?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got some fun pictures here for you to see on the screen, and I'll just highlight one of these examples here. You can see over here in Globe, Ireland. There is an effort called How Spongy Is Your School? So students in over 20 schools across Ireland actually spent several weeks taking in data observations around rain. They put up rain gauges, collected rain, saw exactly how much rainfall was happening, and then also used a Globe protocol to look at land cover and how permeable or impermeable the surfaces in their schoolyard were. And they use this information to kind of figure out how flooding might be impacting their very local community, their schoolyard. And using that information, they then presented to their principal and other school leadership about what nature-based solutions could they maybe take on to reduce flooding again in just their schoolyard in their very local community. And so these students were going all the way from the observation side, taking this rain measurement, all the way through understanding how that measurement was then impacting them, and then moving from impact to potential solutions. And I think that's what really excites me a lot about the Globe program is that it's not just observation for the sake of observation. It's not just beginning and ending with the student taking that measurement. It's then moving beyond that measurement into trying to figure out, okay, how's that impacting my community? What solutions can we find? And in this example with Globe Ireland, some of the students actually were able to get funding to implement the nature-based solutions that they were proposing to their school. So you can see folks digging a kind of a rain garden and retention pond in their school to deal with the flooding.
That's a great example, and I want to move on now to talk a little bit more about sustainable development in general. And many of you may have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals. This is adopted by the UN. It's a set of 17 goals, and they span things from reducing poverty to reducing food insecurity, increasing water quality and water security, and everything from the environment to things that affect people. And so I want to talk a little bit about how Globe fits in with the Sustainable Development Goals. So Lauren, maybe you have some examples here.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, there are Sustainable Development Goals about climate change. There are Sustainable Development Goals about education and quality education for all. And both of those are obviously really key to what Globe is, right? It helps both educate people on how to take these measurements, these specific Globe protocols, and is helping us eventually build a climate-ready nation and world. And there are also really important human health implications, which I think is also exciting and something people might not know about Globe. There are protocols around understanding, for example, mosquito larval environments. So folks can understand what environments might breed mosquitoes, which obviously huge health implications, right? From malaria to other mosquito-borne diseases. And there was a group in Argentina, in Patagonia, who was using this protocol to understand how mosquitoes were surviving in really cold, arid environments, and then trying to take, again, local community-based action to address those potential mosquito habitats and decrease those to help their local community health. I also want to point out that in addition to supporting the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Globe is really important in that it supports NOAA's youth engagement goals more broadly. For over a decade, NOAA's been using education as a tool to kind of help the public understand how our system works. And a lot of that has been focused on helping students get educated about the Earth system, right? And more and more, we're also looking to learn from students, not just to teach students, but to learn from young people across our country. And one of the examples here, I was actually hired on to get more youth voice into our NOAA decision making. And we have this high school fellowship called the EBU Young Changemakers Fellowship that's all about empowering students to take kind of local community-based action, understand their communities, and help lead a project and design a project to address challenges in their communities, and engage with our NOAA leadership team on NOAA priorities. So they actually participated in roundtable discussions with our NOAA administrator, the head of our agency, to share their perspectives on our priorities, make sure that we're really in alignment with this generation of young leaders who's really leading the charge on a lot of climate change and Earth system action. And I think GLOBE really has that same sort of energy and goal of, again, understanding community level challenges, proposing solutions, and then kind of speaking those solutions to people in positions of power, potentially, to make that change.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's also very common to what NASA, we have a goal of educating the public and also engaging the public. And so GLOBE is one of many citizen science efforts that we have. It's really important, both in terms of educating, but also enhancing our science to work with people, no matter where they are. So even if you don't work for us, you can help contribute to science. And it's great working with partners like NOAA that have common goals, so we can work together to make everything go a little bit further. So we talked a little bit about examples from GLOBE and what GLOBE has been doing now. And I think, what you might ask is, what do we do next for GLOBE? So I want to sort of talk a little bit about what's coming in the next year. And there's a lot of great work, and then also a milestone celebration coming up for GLOBE. On Earth Day 2025, so April of 2025, the GLOBE program will celebrate its 30th anniversary. So we have had 30 years of working together to engage people and help us understand our planet. Another big exciting thing coming up for GLOBE is in early 2025, NASA is going to announce the winners of the Space Apps Challenge. If you're not familiar with Space Apps, this is the world's largest hackathon for coders, scientists, designers, storytellers, innovators, technologists. These people come together from around the world to use open data from NASA and other space agencies to help develop solutions for challenges we face on Earth or in space. And in 2024, GLOBE was one of the 20 challenges in the Space Apps Challenge. So we put out a few different challenges. We asked coders and innovators from around the world to help us to develop these solutions, and it's competition. So we'll be announcing the winners in early 2025. And just for reference, this GLOBE Challenge attracted 411 international teams from 54 countries. So we had over 1,600 participants, and they designed games to help educate users about scientific protocols. And really excited to see what these teams develop, and to hear who wins, of course. But all of the innovators have developed something really helpful for the world. And then in the coming decades, the GLOBE program will continue to offer opportunities to participants to gain environmental literacy and to address a wide range, to gain skills and address a wide range of challenges going forward. So I do want to now just, see if Lauren wants to add anything else before we take questions from the audience.
Yeah, just the one additional thing, in addition to obviously thanking NASA for being the lead on this program. It's such a cool partnership with other agencies as well as with young people around the country and around the world. I also want to point out that while our presentation is focused kind of on the youth side of things, GLOBE is for everyone, right? You can join GLOBE as a citizen scientist without being a teacher or a student. Anyone can join GLOBE and participate in these observation protocols and really help us to understand our Earth system. Like we've been talking about, feed into the actual science that NASA and NOAA use to help people make decisions and be a part of this community. So want to open that invite to everyone, not just to young people in the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in joining, you can get an app on your phone where you can submit data from that GLOBE Observer app. You can get it in either Apple or Google Play. So with that, I do want to open it up for questions, and just as an incentive to make you feel more bold about asking questions. People that ask questions get a pin. So if anyone has any questions, Tom will bring around a mic.
Hi, my name is Erica. I previously worked with a bunch of Vermont youth who were working to advocate in their state house for climate policy work. And over the past 3 years, I've noticed that there's been a real high rise of burnout among youth post-COVID. I'm wondering what both of your experience working and advocating for youth, you've noticed like skills and ways to help them combat burnout.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick us off. Yes, that's absolutely something that is obviously, I'm sure you know, not just in Vermont. There's a lot of conversation around climate anxiety, eco-anxiety. Those terms are becoming more commonplace, which I think is helpful. You know, we can put a name on things and start to address it. And a lot of folks like the Climate Mental Health Network has really great resources and is exclusively dedicated to understanding kind of these mental health impacts of things like the climate crisis and helping folks use wellness and those sorts of tools to address that. What I found in the Young Changemakers Fellowship that I run, which is for high school students, is that we've had a lot of open conversations around that. And you know, being vulnerable with my own experiences, making sure that people feel validated and heard and have a space to process all of the emotions associated with climate change, whether it is hope or despair or frustration, anger. Being able to address those openly is really helpful. Providing those mental well-being tools has also been super helpful. And then being compassionate leaders, right? Understanding that you know we can be flexible about things like deadlines. For another like concrete example, like I said, I run this fellowship for high school students. Burnout is very, very real. We work with a lot of high school seniors. Burnout is very, very real during the college application process, for example. They were sharing all of the things that were on their plates. We moved back a deadline by 2 weeks because it happened to be accidentally the same time as their college applications were due. So trying to be empathetic leaders, have open conversations around mental health and climate. Those are kind of what we are trying to do actively to address that. Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear what you think about that question.
Yeah, sorry, and I picked the wrong time to take a sip of water. Yes, I think one of the things, I come from a science background, and I've studied climate change for, more than 20 years. And I think one of the things as a scientist, we owe it to people to be honest. And that's honest about the challenges that climate change is presenting, as well as honest about what we know about it and what we're doing. And so we always talk about challenges, we also talk about hope. That science is hope. We know what's causing this. We have people working on it. And that I think usually helps people quite a bit. The other thing, I always get a question of, what can I do? And I think this is where Globe can be really helpful, because being a part of something helps people. So I think sort of focusing on that, being honest about the science, being honest about what can be done, and giving people an opportunity to participate.
Yeah, from I'm going to put my social scientist nerd hat on. I got my PhD in environmental education and understanding what drives high school students to take different types of environmental action. That collective action is a huge component of fighting climate anxiety, right? Is helping people have that path towards impact is something that is super helpful. And like you said, Globe program, other efforts to be a part of something greater that works towards solutions is really helpful to fight that anxiety, that burnout, those negative parts of this whole experience.
Next question.
Ask a question, get a pin. That's exciting for anybody.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how GLOBE is supporting teachers and educators. They have so much on their plates the way it is, and I was just wondering about like what sorts of resources that you provide to them. My opinion about educators is they're like the unsung heroes of society, and we ask them to do so much. And so I just was curious to know how you guys are supporting educators. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. And amen to everything you said about teachers and educators being the unsung heroes. So GLOBE has a bunch of teacher resources. A whole portion of our website is teacher support. There are workshops, there are online resources, all to kind of support teachers in figuring out how to easily, as much as possible, integrate GLOBE into their classrooms or into after-school programs. Educators aren't just the teachers in the classroom, but after school, nature centers, those sorts of things as well. And educators of all sorts can use those online tools to hopefully, like I said, more easily take the load off of them on developing curricula and specific ways of integrating it, and just use those kind of preset tools to bring it into their classroom. Of course, making any adjustments as teachers know best how to address their own classrooms. But there are a bunch of resources dedicated to educator support.
Yeah, and I would say more generally, I think for both NASA and NOAA, this is an area we continue to work on. So we have a very active Office of STEM Engagement, and they provide resources to children of all ages. So from, more elementary school up through high school and college, so that teachers and parents can help work to understand what's happening and provide kids with resources.
Good morning. Sorry, I might have come late and you might have responded to the question I want to ask. So I want to know if the resources that you have are accessible to other people in countries from the Global South particularly, and would you recommend such information as well to that effect? Thank you.
Yeah, this is publicly available for people all around the world. And one of the things we are doing is actively trying to get more countries and more participants involved. But everything we do is freely available, and we want people to use it wherever they are.
Yeah, there are currently 127 countries who participate in GLOBE, so all over the place. Azerbaijan is not yet one, but we welcome countries all over the place to become member countries. And yes, like you said, everything is available online. There are, teacher resources, protocols, etc. And a lot of the observation tools that are used in these protocols are either free or super low cost. Observing clouds, all you need is a info sheet that tells you what sort of clouds look like what, right? Like that's super easy. Anyone can do that. A rain gauge is super inexpensive. So there are all sorts of accessible ways to participate in GLOBE, and yes, totally all over the world, which is super exciting.
More questions.
Particular class.
I'm not seeing any, but thank you all for coming and joining us this morning. And if you haven't already, the Globe Observer app on your phone, you can help us take pictures of clouds.
Thank you everyone from the U.S. Center. Our next event is at 10:15 on global health and climate, featuring the Department of Health and Human Services. Let's get a round of applause for our speakers, Dr. Kate Calvin and Dr. Lauren Gibson.
We loved having you join us at the U.S. Center. Please remember to return your headsets as you leave. U.S. Center. Our event will start soon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event is going to take place right now. So have everyone put on your headphones to make sure that you can hear. You all should be fine in the front row. Don't worry. The headphones are already on. If you hear my voice, they're working. If there's any issues with your headphones, just raise your hand, and we'll help you off on the side. It's our honor to welcome our event here today from Glasgow to Baku, making progress on climate-responsive health. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Tom. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the U.S. Center's primary health-focused event from Glasgow to Baku, making progress on climate-responsive health. For those of us in the climate and health community, 2021 marked a real turning point. As COP29 in Glasgow broke new ground, as some 50 health ministers and ministries around the world made public commitments to reduce their carbon pollution and enhance their resilience to extreme weather events. And then COP28 in Dubai featured both the first ever dedicated Health Day and health ministerial meetings, with attendance by over 110 countries' health ministries. So today, here in Baku, we're pleased to mark the progress we've made and to share meaningful momentum in addressing the challenges to human health and health systems posed by climate change. And as we make this progress, mark it, and maintain our momentum, we know that the challenges of climate change are not going to go away, but only become more severe year after year. The problems are severe, but the solutions are available to us. And we know that climate solutions are fundamentally and ultimately health solutions. So today, the first half of our session will focus on this progress within the United States. We'll hear from organizations making our nation's community health centers climate smart and federal agency partners working together on community health resilience. But to start us off, it's my pleasure to introduce the Department of Health and Human Services Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Health, Ms. Sarah Boateng, who will provide an update on the progress within the department. Sarah?
Great. Hi. Thank you so much, John. And nice to see everyone this morning. So certainly 2024, we had a number of climate-related disasters in the United States. Hurricane Helene in Milton, wildfires in New Mexico, tornadoes, severe winter storms, extreme heat. And we have a lot of important discussions about the economic impact of climate action. But this morning, we're going to focus on the significant impact on health, and particularly, the harm to health, including death. And it will keep getting worse if more people will be harmed, more death, until strong actions are taken by health ministers in the health sector to build resilience and reduce emission. I'm pleased to highlight a couple of actions that our office, the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity at the U.S. Health and Human Services, has taken in addressing the health benefits of climate action. So as John said, we know at HHS that climate solutions are health solutions. That addressing climate change is good for people, it's good for the health sector, and it's good for business. And at HHS, we're committed to turning our commitments into actions. So in the next couple minutes, I'm going to update the progress on the actions that we have taken since HHS first signed onto the COP26 health program 3 years ago, and on actions that we committed to last year at COP with the HHS Climate Change and Health Equity Strategy. So we've spent a good bit of time this last year working on federal health system resilience and decarbonization. So we provide leadership at HHS across the federal system, so including our clinical service providers at Indian Health Services, at the Veterans Administration, at the Defense Health Agency, the Bureau of Prisons, and all of those groups, all of those agencies, healthcare providers, have committed to reduce emissions themselves few examples. The VA, the Veterans Health Administration, has removed desflurane from its formulary, and the Indian Health Service is following suit. The VA and IHS, the Indian Health Service, have worked together to reduce nitric oxide, going from a central to a portable option. And all of these agencies are working together to reduce emissions for meter dose inhalers. And we're not just working with our federal partners, we're also working with the private sector. So there were certainly historic investments from the Inflation Reduction Act, the largest single investment in climate and clean energy in the history of the world. And so at HHS, we're making sure that the health sector is taking advantage of these investments. We've established the Catalytic Program and the Quick Finder as tools to make it easier for the private health sector to take advantage of these investments. And today we're highlighting a couple of examples of just that. The first is Family Health Centers, a healthcare provider in rural north central Washington state, has used this investment to build a solar array, which allows them to reduce the impact of power outages in their community so that they can continue to provide dental services and clinical services, medical services, even during power outages. Second, a clinic in California, La Clinica de la Raza, also using solar array. And they have a 64 kilowatt hours investment that brings them $14,000 in annual savings. And then we published a paper today highlighting that nearly 1 in 3, or 29% specifically, of healthcare providers, hospitals in the United States are required or voluntarily track and report facility level emissions for their facilities. And this is important because being able to establish a baseline to understand your emissions, to use this information to identify areas of focus and work towards targets is a critical first step for the healthcare sector to continue to reduce emissions. We also continue to do our work on procurement standards in partnership with NHS England and other countries so that we can document our overlap in national procurement standards for health. As we know, a significant portion of greenhouse gases come from the healthcare sector, the sector itself, but also the supply chain that feeds that sector. And then the global connection of the supply chain really necessitates us working together to understand how we can align or at least understand each other's procurement standards and bring some streamline to these standards. So this partnership, as I highlighted, NHS England, but also Australia, Ireland, Norway. We're in discussions with Germany and other countries and coming together. So as I close, as I highlighted at the beginning, we are really committed right now at HHS of turning our commitments into action, and that we know that climate solutions are health solutions. Thanks so much, John.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing those announcements. For anybody who wants to see them on the web, you can go to our website of the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity, and they're all to be found there. If you Google HHS and OCCHE, that will take you right there. Sarah has mentioned some of the case studies that we released today, and specifically case studies about elements of the nation's safety net health institutions, the community health centers, and how they're taking advantage of the triple win of solar power with battery backup as both a less expensive to operate, but also more resilient and clean energy system. And it's a pleasure now. I wanted to be able to share more of a visual example of that. So I'm going to be showing a video that's been provided to us by Ben Money. And Ben's the Senior Vice President of Population Health at the National Association of Community Health Centers that we're working closely with. And he's going to be talking about his Charge partnership that's doing this work in a lot of places around the country. So if we can show the video. And Sarah.
Greetings, and thank you to the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Climate Change and Health Equity for inviting me to share some reflections on health system resilience in the United States, especially the resilience. Greetings, and thank you to the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Climate Change and Health Equity for inviting me to share some reflections on health system resilience in the United States, especially the resilience of the nation's safety net healthcare institutions. My name is Ben Money, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Population Health for the National Association of Community Health Centers. Community health centers serve 32.5 million people across the United States and territories with comprehensive primary care. The majority of our patients live in poverty and reside in areas of environmental risk. Because of their unique importance for the nation's healthcare safety net, it is essential that community health centers are supported with resilient measures to ensure that they can continue operations even, maybe especially when disasters occur. And ensuring resilience and sustainability of the nation's community health centers is also a key part of the Department of Health and Human Services' larger commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the health sector in the United States and enhance its resilience. One of the ways the National Association of Community Health Centers is enhancing health center resilience is through the CHARGE partnership, about which you'll learn more in the video that follows this introduction. In partnership with Capital Link Elective Energy, we are providing solar microgrids with battery backup for community health centers. This is a winning proposition. Health centers are thrilled to be making a positive contribution to carbon reduction while creating more resilience in their operations. Even more, solar power fixes energy costs and allows energy savings to be cycled back into improving access to care. I'm excited to share this video that describes the CHARGE partnership in more detail, and once again, thank our partners at HHS and the U.S. Center at COP29 for this opportunity to share our work.
Why do health centers need microgrids? Health centers have a responsibility to care for their patients, staff, community, and environment. Section 330 of the Public Health Service Act even authorizes health centers to provide specific environmental health services. Caring for people and the planet is what health centers are designed to do, and installing a microgrid is one way to do that can help in many ways. They keep your doors open. Microgrids keep facilities running during planned and disaster-caused power outages, so you can provide continuous care for patients when they need you most. Microgrids have financial benefits. Switching to solar has direct financial savings from reducing the amount of electricity you buy from the grid. With a microgrid, you can fix and continue to reduce your electricity costs for over 30 years, making planning and budgeting easier. And if you have a battery storing the energy you generate, you can sell your excess back to the grid. Plus, a battery helps you avoid indirect, uninsurable losses caused by outages. No more missed patient revenue and spoiled refrigerated medicines. There are individual benefits. The people health centers serve are often those most negatively impacted by climate change-caused disasters and health consequences, as well as bad environmental policies. It is especially important they are able to benefit from resilient, clean microgrids, and surveys show your staff will feel better working at a health center with green technology, thanks to benefits like energy security, convenient EV charging stations, and carport solar, which provide shade, snow coverage, and lighting. Microgrids provide community benefits. During major disasters and climate-related events, resilient health centers prevent costly visits to the ER, reducing dangerous overcrowding. In some cases, they can serve as community resilience hubs and heating and cooling centers. Also, microgrids bring resilient jobs and job training to your community. And of course, there are global benefits. It's no secret the healthcare industry is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gases. The industry can and should be a model of how we can do better. Microgrid-powered health centers could offset millions of tons of CO2 emissions annually, which equates to real change in global greenhouse gas emissions. Finally, microgrids bring something truly priceless: peace of mind. In past disasters, prolonged power loss led to more people dying than the disasters themselves. You won't worry about power going out during an emergency. Focus can remain on patient care, and patients can count on their health center being open when they need it the most. More frequent and longer power outages affect a growing number of people every day. The faster you secure your energy independence, the faster you're freed from a dirty, outdated, and vulnerable power grid. Until now, health centers have largely missed out on the benefits of microgrids. The Charge Partnership is changing that. We are all connected, and it's going to take the collective.
So big thanks to our partners at the National Association of Community Health Centers and the Charge Partnership. I think we often don't think of the health sector when we think about climate policy. We often think about cement and airplanes, and we think about trucks. But this is really showing that this convergence of sustainability and resilience not only saves lives, it saves money, and it saves peace of mind as well. I really thought that video was a nice illustration of that. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Samantha Medlock, who is the Assistant Administrator at FEMA for Resilience Strategy, for a conversation with Ms. Boateng. Over to you.
Great. Hello. Hi. Well, first, thank you for our strong partnership between HHS and FEMA, including on climate-related disasters, and for joining us in today's conversation. So I wanted to start first. There was in the wake of two devastating hurricanes back to back in the United States, and it certainly underscored the need to build more resilient communities, including resilient health systems. Why do you find this work so important, and how can FEMA work with HHS and the health sector to address this?
Thank you so much, Sarah, and what an amazing opportunity to share this stage at this event. Folks are probably most familiar with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, through that disaster response and recovery mission. But we also work in advance of disasters. We partner across the federal government, and we design and advance government-wide resilience strategies and doctrine. For example, recently with the National Resilience Guidance that we issued, this was the product of months and really a year or more of collaboration across U.S. Government agencies, including with HHS, and with our partners and stakeholders across the full range of communities of practice, including in healthcare and public health. So this National Resilience Guidance is really intended to be digestible, to articulate a unified vision of resilience for the nation and the world, and to serve as that sort of whole of community platform, working across government at every level of government and across different disciplines and even economic sectors. And so as we at FEMA advance that sort of higher level policy and doctrine, we only succeed because of the partnerships like what we have with HHS, because it is well informed by the work that you all lead and that you achieve and that we get done together. So certainly in the wake of a disaster, we will partner in multiple ways through the disaster recovery missions, through the recovery support functions that include functions around health and healthcare. In advance of disaster, though, we also have those great opportunities to collaborate as well. For example, our work on the Mitigation Framework Leadership Group, or MITFLAG, because we must have an acronym for absolutely everything. But this is that collaboration across more than 20 departments and agencies in the U.S. federal government, aiming to advance hazard mitigation through the full range of our missions and authorities. And it is also through those kinds of partnerships that we uplift so many of our intersectional work and advancing work to address the vulnerabilities for lower income populations or communities of color and others that are struggling on the margins to access services. We also, of course, collaborate on heat. And that has been an incredibly urgent issue that is getting great discussion here at COP this year, but also really continues to threaten health, economic prosperity, even security. So I'm really honored with the FEMA and an HHS partnership on the National Integrated Heat Health Information System, the first ever national heat strategy that is unifying and guiding work across the federal government to confront heat threats and emergencies, and the platform of heat.gov. heat.gov. So a single platform in place for people to go for information, actionable strategies that they can be undertaking in their household, in their communities, across their businesses or their institutions to confront heat threats in advance. But beyond that as well, we work through all of our missions and authorities, our programs at FEMA to advance work in partnership with the health sector and addressing health infrastructure, not just through resilience and adaptation, but also through those ways that we can be reducing greenhouse gas emissions and pollution and working in concert together. For example, little known fact, in the Inflation Reduction Act, it gave FEMA homework to take on. So we've been implementing that through our net zero energy policy, as well as through our low carbon materials policy. What this means is in the wake of a disaster, if a healthcare center or a hospital is going to be rebuilding, not only can we support that rebuilding for resilience, to be stronger using modern codes and standards against future threats, but we can also support and even help pay for advancements to deploy renewables and storage, microgrids that we just saw, or other measures that can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and pollution. Additionally, through the partnerships with resilience hubs that also just got mentioned, we get to partner on things like the Resilience Hub in Baltimore, Maryland, working with the Urban Sustainability Directors Network to deploy health and healthcare resources as well as emergency support services in communities where people are, where it's needed most. So it's an exciting collaboration, as you see, lots of different facets that are involved in that, but it's all really done as everything else gets done because of relationships, John and Sarah, because of the ways that we've gotten to know each other through this work and the ways that we advance our missions working together.
Well, thank you so much. And certainly you have been busy at FEMA moving these important efforts forward. But I would like to know about what you're most proud of, particularly around community resistance that you've had the opportunity to do.
Yeah, I think I'm probably most proud of what we have achieved just in these recent months and what we're setting the stage for in 25. And that is through the Community Disaster Resilience Zones, or CDRs. So the Community Disaster Resilience Zones Act was signed into law in 2022. About a year later, September 2023, FEMA announced the first zones that are in communities across the United States. There are community disaster resilience zones in every state. We've also recently announced zones with that were co-designated with tribal partners and that have been designated in our territories. These are intended to be places in a place-based effort that are most at risk of climate disasters and are most in need of technical and financial assistance. So these zones that are actually census tracts, these are polygons that have been drawn on a map, really serve to pre-identify those places where we know we can make the biggest difference in deploying technical and financial assistance across the federal government, but also through the private sector and through philanthropy. For example, at FEMA, we provide stronger cost share with the federal programs taking on more of that burden, easing the cost for local leaders for our Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program that can support pre-disaster work on clinics, community health centers, and hospitals, as well as a more stronger federal cost share and essentially incentive points for the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program. But so far, we have designated these zones. We've simply drawn polygons on a map so far. But what we do see is the private sector deploying those technical assistance tools directly in communities already. We see programs across the federal government that are looking to prioritize resources into these community disaster resilience zones. And I'm really excited about working with you all in 2025 to see where we could come together and map in a place-based way where we could work together to deploy funding and technical assistance in those zones and those community health centers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your insights, Assistant Administrator Medlock and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary Boateng. thank you for this very much. With this, we are going to do a transition from the first half of the session, which has been domestically focused, and we are going to transition to an international portion. So thank you. We'll have a round of applause for our video and for our participants on stage. And now, as our second set of panelists come up, I'll introduce them. First, Ms. Lindsay Doyle, who is the Senior Advisor for Climate Policy at USAID. Molly Helmuth, who is the Senior Project Director for the Comprehensive Action for Climate Change Initiative at APT Global. And we also have Ms. Tatiana Martufo, welcome, who is the Coordinator of the Health and Environment Program at the National Institute of Health at the government of Mozambique. And there we go. Now we can all be in the right places. And there we go. So, and we have the whole panel here, it looks like. Yes. So let me start with a question for you, Ms. Doyle. So in your role, you are working on PREPARE, and you'll explain that acronym to everybody. So how has PREPARE supported climate and health priorities at the country level, and what are some of the major issues that have emerged in terms of addressing climate impacts on health in developing countries?
Great. Thank you so much. And first, I want to thank HHS as well as APT Global, our partners, for putting this event together, and also personally you, John, for your leadership on climate and health over the course of this administration. And I just wanted to, point out in the recently released 2024 Lancet countdown on health and climate change found that 10 out of 15 indicators that are monitoring climate change related health indicators reached concerning new records in their most recent year of data. So we know that this is really concerning on a global level. Within USAID's work, we're seeing shifting precipitation patterns and increasing temperatures that are creating the conditions for the expansion and spread of harmful infectious diseases, whether that be dengue, malaria, West Nile virus, that are really exposing vulnerable populations, which is our key focus. We saw this in Pakistan in 2022 flooding, which covered nearly a third of the country underwater, that was immediately followed by very large dengue outbreaks. Extreme heat, which was mentioned, is killing more than 500,000 people a year and affects both stunting in children and is decreasing the nutritional value of food, which has huge repercussions. This event is aptly named From Glasgow to Baku, and one of the key announcements that was made by President Biden at COP29 in Glasgow was the launch of PREPARE, which is the President's Emergency Plan for Adaptation and Resilience. And it has a goal of supporting more than 500 million people globally to adapt to and manage the impacts of climate change by 2030. Finance is a major part of this plan. And here in Baku, the White House announced that the U.S. government has met President Biden's pledge to invest $3 billion annually in PREPARE. And we've done that 2 years in a row and 1 year ahead of schedule. So we're really proud of that advancement. And this includes climate adaptation and health. PREPARE is co-led by the State Department and USAID, implemented by 20 agencies, including HHS and FEMA. And let me just give you a couple of examples of the work in the health sector under PREPARE. First, around climate information services and early warning, which is really the bedrock for climate adaptation and a major gap in developing countries. In Ethiopia, the President's Malaria Initiative is helping to scale tools that integrate climate information with malaria surveillance so that we can pre-position bed nets and insecticide as the season for malaria changes due to climate change. We're also doing this in Zambia as well. In sub-Saharan Africa, we're incorporating heat into the famine early warning system, or FuseNet, so that we can see in dozens of countries where we're facing dual risks of both heat exposure and famine, and this will be helping to inform humanitarian assistance. Through USAID-funded research, we're monitoring also the potential resurgence of neglected and tropical diseases as a result of warming temperatures. Just to get to a bit more of the health component of PREPARE, there's two objectives that we have. One is to support partner countries' ability to plan for the impacts of climate change on their public health systems. And the second is to directly increase the resilience of those health services in the face of both slow and fast onset events. So with country partners, we're providing direct support, for example, for the integration of health into national adaptation plans, such as in the Philippines. And we're also working with UN agencies such as UNICEF and WHO to build up the technical capacity for monitoring potential climate disruptions to health systems. And as we heard in the first panel as well, there's quite a bit of work going on in terms of electrification of rural clinics as a key source of resilience and reducing greenhouse gas emissions through Power Africa's Healthcare Electrification and Telecommunications Alliance. And then this third pillar within Prepare on mobilizing finance and private capital, we're seeing the private sector really come to the table more as they're seeing the impacts of climate change on their supply chains. AstraZeneca, for example, responded to the Prepare call to action with new work on heart and kidney disease detection in sub-Saharan Africa, expanding their work as they understand heat will intensify those impacts. So I'll pause there and appreciate the opportunity to share that progress.
Thank you so much, Lenji. Thank you. Molly, a question for you. How are global USAID climate programs supporting climate and health integration at the country level? And how does this contribute to a national climate agenda?
Thank you for the question, John, and I really appreciate all the efforts to organize this event. I'm the Senior Project Director for COSI, which John mentioned from the outset, but just to give a little bit of background on COSI, it's implemented by APT Global, and we work across policy, practice, including in health integration practice, climate finance, bringing climate finance to health and other sectors, as well as in monitoring and evaluation. So I'm going to talk about 4 activities that COSI is implementing, and then just 2 activities that APT Global is implementing for the Global Health Bureau at USAID. So we have 4 distinct activities, 3 that are funded by the Global Health Bureau. And they focus on mitigation, adaptation, and resilience and finance. So there's quite an array of different activities, and even within the sort of more mitigation-oriented activities, the resilience benefits are quite clear, as we heard about the health electrification this morning and all the resilience benefits that come from that. So the first activity is focusing on assessing USAID's supply chain emissions and trying to address those emissions. So the USAID climate change strategy has 3 objectives, and one of them is called doing our part, which really means that we're going to take a look at the emissions that our missions and our operations have, and we're going to try to address those. And so this is a program that is funded by the Global Health Bureau to look at the emissions, look at the suppliers, work with the suppliers, and reduce those emissions across the supply chain and within the operations. The second activity is focusing on integration of climate into health systems, and we are doing that in 2 pilot countries. We have TBD, to be decided, what those countries would be, but we are just kicking this work off, and we have developed a diagnostic that looks at the health system and assesses the opportunities and the risks across the health system and where USAID missions and their objectives and country objectives may align. So we're going to work with the missions to identify synergies and opportunities, look at the different types of donor programs that are ongoing within countries, and see where the opportunity is for the U.S. government to support climate integration into health systems. The third activity is focusing on developing an impact fund. So we're engaging private sector to support impact funding in health systems, particularly in South and Southeast Asia. This is going to be a blended finance mechanism that will allow private sector funding to support health initiatives in select countries in the region. We actually have identified a blended finance initiative platform that would help facilitate this a little bit more quickly. And that platform is dedicated to mobilizing over $1 billion in private capital for the SDGs, including health, by 2030. Through COSI's private sector engagement. So we have within COSI, we have a partnership for climate action where we're working with private sector actors. And at last year's COP, we announced $20 billion in commitments from private sector actors. And one of those commitments came from Genesis Energy, a $10 billion commitment to support clean energy initiatives and indices within countries, and they're predominantly working in Africa. So we've been working with Genesis Energy to support and facilitate the building of rooftop solar for healthcare electrification, essentially, and with support from Power Africa and USAID DFC. So they have already got their PPA, purchasing power agreement, in place, and so they're ready to roll on that. They're also working on a bunch of other initiatives and activities. Similarly to that, Apt Global is implementing the Health Electrification and Telecommunications Alliance, otherwise known as HETA. A lot of acronyms in the space, but we're working with USAID missions and with Power Africa, the Power Africa program, to bring renewable energy to electrify over 100,000 health facilities, providing clean energy to facilitate improved access to life-saving care and increase resilience, similar to what we had heard about earlier in an earlier session. We're also implementing the Local Health System Sustainability Project, otherwise known as LHSS, which is USAID's flagship initiative in integrated health system strengthening. LHSS's goal is to help low and middle income countries achieve strong, sustainable health systems as a means to support access to universal health coverage. And within that program, we're supporting local health providers to identify and implement sustainability measures and operations within the health service plans, also including improving emergency preparedness and epidemic response. So that is kind of a high-level overview of some of the activities that we're supporting through U.S. government funding.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Helmuth. And so we've heard from the U.S. perspective about some of the initiatives that have really been ramping up over the last 3 years. Now we have the honor of being joined by Ms. Martufo, who will tell us a little bit about what's going on the ground in Mozambique. And if you could maybe share with us some of the ways in which health is being integrated into climate services in Mozambique.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to be part of this panel and sharing our experience in Mozambique. So my name is Tatiana Marrufo. I work for the governor of Mozambique, the National Public Health Institute in Mozambique. And I want to share here what we have been doing in the past 7 years in terms of climate and health, and how we are integrating climate on the health services. Actually, the governor of Mozambique has this structure that was created by the Minister of Health, which is the National Health Observatory. And within this observatory, we have prioritized 5 thematic areas, and one of them is definitely climate, environment, and health. The role of the observatory is actually to assess the situation of the population in Mozambique using the data that already exists in the country, and conducting or running analysis, triangulation analysis, bringing also the perspective of the social determinants of health. So in terms of our climate, environment, and health thematic area, and as well as the others, this observatory performs in terms of 2 main activities. So the first one is the one that I've already mentioned, so assess the situation of the health using the data in which we are conducting trend analysis and monitoring of indicators. And the second type of activities that we are running are actually modeling activities in which we are assessing or we are producing risk mappings, taking into account modeling activities to address actually the impacts, the current and future impacts. And with this analysis, we actually produce some analytical products which are translated in policy brief, reports, bulletins, so short products that we can actually deliver to the decision-making process. One of our good experience that we have in this area of climate, environment and health, it's that since we are working with data, we have established a memorandum of understanding with the Met Office, the National Met Office in Mozambique, so that we can share data among the Minister of Health and the Met Office, but also sharing expertise among the technical people from both institutions. And another good thing of the observatory is that this observatory operates in technical working groups, multi-institutional. So we are bringing together different types of expertises, but different type of institutions working together to actually answer what the government has prioritized as a question that we might respond to actually influence the decision-making process. For example, one of the questions that we have been working in the past years with the Met Office is how will look like in terms of the diseases or climate-sensitive diseases during the rainy season. So we are developing some type of risk maps using mathematical models based on the data coming from the Met Office, so their outlook for the following rainy season. And then we are triangulating the data, so the data from the Met Office and the data from the climate-sensitive diseases, mainly malaria and diarrheal diseases, and we are developing these risk maps for the rainy season. So in that way, we are supporting the Minister of Health of having this information in advance so that they can prepare for the rainy season or the cyclonic season that we might have in Mozambique, which is like 6 months length in our country. So this is one of our examples that I have, but we are doing a lot of things such as early warning systems also, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Ms. Martufo. Very interesting to hear all the progress going on in Mozambique. And we are also have the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Didicus Namanya, who is the Climate and Health Focal Point for the Ministry of Health in the country of Uganda. We only have a few minutes left in the session, but we would love to hear from you about what's going on in Uganda with your National Adaptation Plan for Health, or HNAP.
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Didicus Namanya, and I'm the focal person for climate change and health. As you can clearly see, in Uganda, we have developed a climate change national health adaptation plan, which stipulates all the components according to the WHO framework on governance and policy, on climate smart health workforce, on climate and health research, on issues related to determinants of health. So it has 10 components which cover all the framework of the WHO. What I could like to share is that we did this together with support from the Rockefeller Foundation, and we first did a vulnerability and adaptation assessment for the whole country. And this information, together with other sources of information like published and grey literature, we worked with all the stakeholders in the health sector, in the non-health sector ministries, CSOs, to come up with this plan. This plan is 5 years. It is going to cover 5 years, and it has been properly costed, and it will cost about $63.1 million US, touching all those components I've mentioned. We presented it on Saturday to a global community at the WHO pavilion, and we are getting people interested in supporting the implementation. And at this point, I would also ask if there are any people here interested in supporting the implementation of this plan to come up and join us in implementing this to build a resilient health system in Uganda. Thank you very much for giving me this audience to explain this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Namanya, for being here and sharing this, and opening up the opportunity for partnership to help with the implementation of the HNAP. Thank you very much. So we are coming to the close. I want to just start by thanking our panelists for this second session for all of their insights. And
HNAP, but it's also available online, and you can download it. If you Google search Uganda National Climate Change Health National Adaptation Plan, you'll get it from our website. Thank you very much.
So I hope in this session we've conveyed this theme. We started with commitments. As Assistant Administrator Medlock said, sometimes we draw polygons. We make plans. We start with the words, but we've demonstrated the actions, whether that action is money out the door, whether that action is the installation of solar panels and microgrids and battery backups, whether that action is the provision of real-time reports and information that help the ministries of health make decisions. So we are making progress in the health sector. We are late to the game, but these are demonstrations of real progress, and yet we all know we have a long way to go. So I hope we've conveyed that the momentum is there, that the business case is there, the health case is there, the economic case is there, the safety and security case is there for us to continue this work for many years to address the threats that we know are not going away. So again, thank you very much, and thank you to the audience for being with us today.
We loved having you join us at the U.S. Center. Please remember to return your headsets as you leave. Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event's going to start right now, so please put on your headphones. If you can hear me talking clearer than day, your headphones are working. They should already be on. Put them on your head. There's a toggle button on the power side that can make the volume go up and down. If at any point your headphones stop working, just raise your hand. We can give you a hand. It's our honor to start our event here today on Stocktaking our progress on decarbonizing industry. And to welcome to the podium the Deputy Secretary of Energy for the U.S. Department of Energy, Dave Turk.
Well, thanks very much. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. Let me just first start by thanking you all for being part of this event. I want to thank our panelists in particular. We've got such phenomenal champions, folks who devoted their careers. I don't know how many hours a day you're working these days, Rick and Annie from the climate change team with John Podesta. We got Armando, Helen, who we've known each other for years. Thank you for all your work in this space. Let me just maybe set the scene for what I think is going to be a terrific discussion. I think, Andy, you're going to be moderating, if I understood correctly, and lay out just a few thoughts. We're here talking about the industrial sector and industrial sector emissions. I think rightfully so. It's an issue, frankly, that I'm not sure got as much attention and even now gets as much attention as it really deserves. Those of you who are here, I'm sure, appreciate just how important the sector is. Let me just give you a few numbers in the U.S. context about why we're so focused, why the Biden-Harris administration so rightfully focused on this sector. It is 12% of our domestic economy. That's a big deal. It's 13 million Americans who rely on manufacturing for their jobs. Those numbers have increased significantly under the leadership of Biden-Harris. That's a lot of fellow Americans who depend on this industry for their livelihoods. it actually ends up being 20% of our energy use domestically and about 20% of our emissions as well. So this is rightfully a big sector. My hope is it gets more and more attention going forward. Secondly, it's diverse. This gets complicated. Each sector, each part of the manufacturing, each part of the industrial sector has its own particular players, has its own particular technologies involved. There are some overlaps, of course. Hydrogen is an interesting technology that can be useful across a variety of different industrial sectors. There are learnings from cement to steel, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a diversity here. There is a complexity here. And I think that's why we need to have the kind of analysis that I'll be talking about here in just a few minutes. And then the third piece, which I think is useful just to underscore, a lot of times people use the word hard to abate. I'm not a big fan of hard to abate because we've got to abate everything, right? If we're going to get to net zero, we can't just focus on electricity and hope everything else comes along. We've got to tackle everything at once. We've got to focus on transportation. That's the largest segment of our emissions in the U.S. We've got to focus on industry for all the reasons I just mentioned. We've got to focus on building emissions. We have to do it all. It may be that some things are a little bit easier and maybe some things are a little bit harder. But unlike a college student, you've got to do it all at once. You can't procrastinate. You've got to do the homework now. You've got to do the work now. You've got to have the grant programs, the tax incentives, everything to get going on that front. I'm here to announce, I think, an incredibly important report that our colleagues have put together in the U.S. I think it will have use not only in our country but internationally as well. You can now find it. It's available. It's called the National Blueprint for a Clean and Competitive Industrial Sector. And I really want to underscore the competitive piece of that as well, right? We can't just solve climate change. That's not good enough. We have to rebuild manufacturing. We have to have competitive industries. It's good policy. It's good politics going forward. Let me just underscore a few features that this report really highlights. And I think I know Annie will be an incredibly skillful moderator, and I know a number of these pieces will come out in the discussion going forward. Certainly, we've got to focus on the supply side. There's no doubt we've got historic amounts of incentives, grant monies, tax incentives, other things to help on the supply, right? To help the costs get reduced so that we can have more technology solutions, so that we have less and less of a green premium going forward. That's an incredibly important part of the equation. But we also have to focus on the demand piece of it as well. It's not enough to just focus on the supply piece. You've got to focus on the demand piece. We've got the First Movers Coalition, which is an incredibly powerful mechanism. We've also tried to use some of the grant money that we've gotten in the U.S. for a variety of creative demand-side mechanisms. We've devoted $1 billion on the creative demand side for hydrogen. We've done a similar kind of thing in a variety of other areas, and being innovative, being creative on the government side of things. We've got to, of course, have the right enabling infrastructure beyond the supply and demand piece. The regulations, the codes, the standards, all of those kinds of plumbing issues that is so important and so challenging sometimes to get right on the government side of things. This allows, among other things, for permitting to go forward quicker for some of these clean energy technologies going forward. We also have to keep focused centrally on people and communities. I was just at an event with Minister Habeck from Germany, who's been such a champion in this area, and he was talking about how whether it's wind turbines, whether it's other kinds of clean energy technologies, make sure you bring it from a lens of the people, from a community perspective, and I think that's incredibly important, including and maybe especially on the industrial strategy side of things. It's the right thing to do, right? We should be looking after our fellow humans as we go through this transition first and foremost, and make sure that the communities in which these industrial facilities, the incumbent industrial facilities that we're cleaning up, but these new industrial facilities as well. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, sometimes called the Rust Belt. I don't like that term, but we did have a steel mill that was basically closing down my entire life. Now under the Biden-Harris administration, and I think there's a durability to the tax incentives, the grant money, most of which is actually out the door. So I think there's a real durability to a lot of that funding to help communities in the future and to really think through that community perspective first and foremost on that front. And lastly, this report, this blueprint, lays out some learnings. But we all have to work with each other, share with each other in real time. We don't have time to waste. And so hopefully you all benefit from the panel. Hopefully there's some conversations that are spurred from this blueprint, spurred from this panel going forward, so we can all learn from each other in real time to do the job that we need and we know we need to get done. So we'll leave it there, and Annie, I think I'm turning it over to you. Thanks, y'all.
Well, first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to Deputy Secretary Crane for those great remarks, and also for introducing the U.S. National Blueprint for a Clean and Competitive Industrial Sector. I think this is a really exciting document. I hope that everybody who is here with us in the room or watching us on live stream really checks it out and looks into the great work that's been put into laying out this blueprint. I'm Annie Hills. I am a senior advisor in the Office of the U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, and very excited to kick off this panel to discuss a little bit more around some of these questions on industrial decarbonization. We heard a little bit from Deputy Secretary Turk. I'm sorry, I may have said Crane earlier. Turk about this blueprint. I want to just highlight a couple of the strategies that we've published today, which are first, to really accelerate available near-term, cost-effective, low-carbon solutions. Those are things like energy efficiency and low to medium temperature heat. That's going to be an important activity that we need to do immediately. The second strategy that we talk about in this blueprint is to demonstrate emerging solutions at scale, things like CCUS and hydrogen. The third thing that's laid out in this blueprint is the need to increase data usage to improve efficiency and to track progress. The fourth thing laid out in the blueprint is that we need to advance research for deep GHG reductions. And the final strategy that we lay out in this blueprint is the need to integrate standards and evaluation methods across the value chain for each of these products. So all of these strategies are critical. They're strategies where we've done a lot of work at home, but we need to do a lot more. And so I'm excited to talk to our three great panelists today across both the private and the public sector. We can talk about what we have done to date in the U.S., but also what really needs to be done. So without further ado, let me introduce our three panelists. We have Helen Walter-Terranoni, the Director of Global Climate Policy at Trane Technologies. We have Rick Duke, the U.S. Deputy Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, and Armando Avila, the Senior Director for Energy and Sustainability Solutions at Honeywell. So Armando and Helen, you're our two private sector representatives. I'm going to start with you first. You guys both provide solutions in the clean manufacturing space, provide the solutions that will be needed to clean up industry. My question for you, and maybe I'll start with you, Helen, and then take it to Armando, is what do you see as the biggest opportunity for making American industry cleaner and more competitive globally? And can you tell us a bit about what you're doing at Trane and then at Honeywell to push this forward?
Thank you very much, Annie. So for those of you who may not know, Trane Technologies is the largest heating and cooling provider in the world. We range the temperatures from down to -80 up to very high temperatures for industrial processing and everything in between. And we are very deeply committed. Our leadership is paid in part by reductions in greenhouse gas emissions from the customer's use of our products. So we're very, very committed to this action. We recently announced a 40% reduction in embodied emissions goal by 2030, and we have a roadmap laid out to do that. And one of the ways that we are doing that is through being a first mover in the First Movers Coalition. So, we purchase, and our suppliers know that we are very interested in low carbon steel or net zero steel, and we've been purchasing that for some time. Our next highest footprint is aluminum, copper, and refrigerants, and so we've been kind of working our way through all of that for the past 10 years, and we'll continue to do so. But we're also on the supply side of this. So, we supply industrial heating equipment. Some examples of some things that we've done for our customers. If you think about farms produce a lot of heat to pasteurize milk, for example. They can use waste heat from the cooling process that they use to cool the milk after it's been pasteurized, and that's something that we've seen some interest in, especially in Europe. And now I hope we'll see more of that uptake in the U.S. as well. But that's a money saver for farmers, right? It's not just great for the environment; it's also great for the family farm. But in that temperature range, those technologies are very available. They're available from a heat pump perspective, and they're available now, and they're available with very excellent energy efficiency. And again, they can save money. Another view of that kind of waste heat to energy perspective, my first job, I probably shouldn't say this, was actually at a chemical plant in Mississippi, and we one of the first things that they were doing is looking at greenhouse gas reductions, and they looked at the waste heat from the entire plant, including manufacture of power and energy, and found very quickly that it was a great way to save a lot of money. So, like that waste heat, that kind of that temperature range up, especially for food processing and those lower, higher temperatures, I guess I'm going to call them. Those technologies are available today, and we can save people money by pushing forward.
Great, thank you. I think it's always helpful to remember that just because we call these the hard-to-abate sectors, just because, we're here talking about it, doesn't mean that you have to only do these things out of philanthropy. It can also be good business. Energy efficiency is good business. Armando, I want to ask the same question to you. What are the biggest opportunities that you all see at Honeywell, and what steps have you taken to
Sure thing, forward? Annie, and thank you, first of all, for your leadership in all of this work, and your leadership as well. I know this is a big task that we're trying to do, is solving these issues that are facing us. I would say, I think if you look at, take a step back and sort of look at what we're trying to do here, and these markets for these clean energy technologies, quite frankly, are still very nascent, right? We're trying to develop them. And I think the one thing that industry really needs, if we're going to mature these technologies and deploy them at scale, is regulatory certainty, right? I think that project developers need to know what regulations they need to have, and sort of what are the parameters they're playing with to make sure that, they know where to invest and how to invest and really get these technologies out the door. Similarly, Honeywell has some, ambitious climate targets that we are working towards, carbon neutrality targets. And we invest about 60% of our R&D research goes into, or R&D funding goes into technologies that are supporting the sustainability agenda. And so we recently set up a new business unit called Sustainability Technology Solutions, which is essentially the organization within the company that's actually setting up or developing and maturing these technologies to get them out the door. So, we've been in the processing industry for over about 100 years now. And so we're using those very same technologies, we're maturing them, scaling them, and actually deploying them now to support, those efforts that are going on in the energy transition. So, I would say regulatory certainty, and just making sure that we know exactly what's where we need to focus on so that we can get that.
And if I can put you on the spot, for those who aren't aware, what are the kinds of technologies that you are focusing on in that new sector?
Yep, sure. So we have carbon capture technologies, we have sustainable aviation fuels. We have both blue and green hydrogen, so we use that same, carbon capture tech to be able to capture emissions from the hydrogen production process, and then also developing membranes, catalyst-coated membranes that are going to go into electrolyzers, essentially the heart of the electrolyzer that's going to be able to support the green hydrogen economy. So as a tech provider, we're tech neutral. We go where the demand go. We support where the demand comes from our customers, and so we very much invest where we need to invest to make sure that we're providing those solutions that are going to help decarbonize the quote-unquote hard-to-abate sector. So yeah,
really helpful. Thanks, Armando. We're very lucky to have Rick, the Deputy Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, on the panel with us. We started with Deputy Secretary Turk speaking a bit about the blueprint that we put together. Rick, you also can give some light on how the USG has been thinking about industrial decarb. So I'm going to give the sort of same question over to you, which is, what do you see as the biggest opportunities in this space, and can you lay a bit of the groundwork on what the U.S. has been doing here?
Yeah, thanks, Annie, and thanks to the panelists. Armando, Helen, it's great to be here and have this discussion. It is such a crucial part of what needs to be done globally and in the United States to keep 1.5C within reach. And it is if not hard to abate, it's at least complicated to abate. I think we can all agree. There are many ways that the United States has been coming at this. Let me just start with a little bit on the domestic front, and then let me talk a little bit about how we try to amplify that internationally. On the domestic front, the funding that has been put in place through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act and its tax credits puts in place an incredibly strong foundation for transformation of industry in the United States, including those most complicated primary emissions from primary energy use in industry itself, as opposed to electricity and its secondary emissions. I think that it's worth just reprising that in addition to, let's say, for example, nearly $6 billion in direct funding for manufacturing transformation through that set of legislation, there's also, in the form of the tax credits, multiple important ways that the United States is now on a durable, very powerful footing for clear incentives to do what's needed on the industry sector. So, for example, there is a technology-neutral tax credit for clean power that then sets up a really strong incentive to get to clean power as quickly as possible. And I'll note that our coal power share has already dropped to 16% in the latest numbers I've seen in the United States, and we're ramping up renewables quickly. We need to see some permitting progress and the like, but we can really move quickly on that. That's crucial because as we talk about efficiency in every end-use sector, including in the industrial sector, it should really start with electrification at this point. A lot of what's needed in terms of efficiency at this stage in the game is about that extraordinary jump in efficiency, the step change in efficiency that comes from electrifying end uses, whether it's a vehicle where you get a 3 or 4x gain in efficiency from electrifying that vehicle, or a heat pump in an industrial low temperature, medium temperature process heat setting. Electrification is not just the future, it's the present, and electrification with clean power supported by the durable tech-neutral tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act provide extremely strong footing for the United States in this regard. Second area is hydrogen. The elements of the Inflation Reduction Act that support clean hydrogen are powerful and are going to be yielding rapid scale-up, are already yielding rapid scale-up of different types of clean hydrogen. And, of course, that can be tremendously valuable in the industrial sector, broadly defined as a substitute feedstock. And, indeed, I would argue that that's the most important application of hydrogen. And I'd note as just a sidebar that as we ramp up hydrogen production in the United States and globally, we do want to pay attention to where we use the hydrogen and how we transport it around. Because, as you may know, it's a very, 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 very small molecule. And if you transport it long distances, it will escape. And if too much of it escapes, it does cause climate warming effect of its own. So good to focus first on producing and using hydrogen near major uses of hydrogen in the industrial sector without lots of long-distance transportation and the risks that attend that. It's also where we need it the most in our view. So that's another example where those tax credits are giving us incredibly firm footing in the United States. And, of course, on carbon capture, utilization, and storage, we have major opportunities to tackle the various slipstreams of CO2 that come out of everything from petrochemicals facilities and refineries to ammonia production facilities to natural gas processing facilities and subsectors like cement. And you have in the Inflation Reduction Act very strong carbon capture, utilization, and storage incentives as well. Now, you may say, how durable are these? I would just note that there is precedent for these particular incentives, which industry knows need to be stable and clear over time to be effective, to prove quite durable across administrations. For example, in December of 2015, when the Paris Agreement was being agreed, I was perhaps equally excited about success in getting a 5+ year wind and solar tax credit package done at the same moment, and that indeed persisted right across administrations and delivered record years of wind and solar across the first Trump administration. So we see strong bipartisan support for this. We see industry knowing that stability and clarity to invest against in these tax credit incentives is invaluable. And for the industrial sector, I think there hasn't been as much attention as is warranted on just how strong the transformation opportunity is from that suite of incentives and yet more in the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, just sorry to go on, but just a word on how this then gets amplified globally. I won't say much for now, and we'll see kind of where the conversation takes us. But as an example, Annie has been our lead on the First Movers Coalition, where we've worked to create a coalition of over 100 firms that represent $16 billion in purchasing power. Thank you to Train in that regard, for the best products, steel or cement or you name it. And we think that's an important part of a global approach to really pulling these solutions into the marketplace, and we appreciate your leadership. I don't know if Honeywell's in there. Sorry, I didn't check. But if not, come in. The water's warm. And then we also see things like a couple days ago here, I participated in a ministerial on the Carbon Management Challenge, which is a good opportunity here at COP to put carbon management in context of COP. And I want to say something that can get confusing on that point, which is, look, there's 4 big things the world needs to do to keep 1.5 within reach. It's, of course, I would say we have to tackle the non-CO2s that are causing over half of today's climate change. You know about this, Helen, can speak to it. Methane, HFCs, N2O, tropospheric ozone. These are the climate emergency brake we need to pull right now, and we can. The second is we do need to halt and reverse tropical deforestation. The third is, of course, energy transition to stabilize long-term climate. As it happens, it doesn't do a lot for us in the near term on warming trajectory, but it is absolutely signature element of what we need to do to get that done now so that we stabilize long-term climate. And the fourth and final is carbon management. We do need to have carbon dioxide removal scaling up so that it's ready by mid-century. As we do all 4 of these things at once, that needs to be part of the solution set. And I just put it in context because I want to be clear, carbon management, carbon dioxide removal is an essential complement to those other 3 imperatives. And then within the energy transition, of course, you've got opportunities to pioneer carbon capture technologies, including as relates to scaling up direct air capture or other solutions for carbon dioxide removal down the line. Much more than you probably wanted, Annie. Back to you.
No, that was fantastic. I think everyone enjoys hearing that laid out in such a succinct way and understanding our theory of the world and our theory of change. And again, I just want to highlight, because we heard about that question about regulatory certainty, and then Rick talking a bit about the tax credits and their importance in helping us meet our industrial decarbonization goals, and more broadly our goal to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach. And just to hammer home what he said about what we hope to see being a real durability of these tax credits that are so important. So, Helen, we've talked a little bit. It's come up now a bit. Electrify everything, energy efficiency, low to medium temperature heat. These solutions sort of make intuitive sense, and yet it's not like there have been 100% uptake today quite yet. So what do you see as the largest barriers to scaling up some of these solutions that we really need to see deployed everywhere as soon as we can?
I mean, I think there's an awareness that we need to work on. Customers are volunteers, and we need to help people understand the money-saving opportunity. Many of these opportunities, if you think about that lower, medium temperature range, many of those opportunities are kind of food processing. Those are smaller businesses, and so those opportunities. Certainly scale to larger companies as well, but there's a whole host of kind of those small and medium enterprises that we need to think about. This is globally estimated to be a 10 gigaton a year problem, the entire industrial sector, and but there's a very large chunk of that sits in this space, and between energy efficiency that you get with heat pumps, and as well as just energy efficiency in general, using waste heat, and it's an opportunity again for money savings as well as But I think that we need to think through also. A clever financing mechanisms. And energy services, can be a solution to this. So, kind of helping to, lift through that upfront capital investment. There are certainly banking options that we've seen around the world where there are loans and other clever mechanisms, to carry so that the energy savings ultimately has a payback, which can pay back very quickly. In less than 5-7 years, if you think of that. So I think there are opportunities but I think that you've got to have some education process to help people understand that opportunity. And again, there is a capital upfront investment for people to think about.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Helen. Armando, I want to go to you and keep digging into these questions of what are some of the roadblocks that exist today. And maybe I want to reframe it slightly for you, which is, what do you see as the most critical infrastructure investments, the way we need to get past infrastructure roadblocks in order to support the industrial decarbonization?
Yeah, 100%. So I think I echo Helen's comments in that I think financing is a huge piece of this, right, in making sure that we can get the money out the door and get investment in these projects. Obviously, we mentioned regulatory certainty. That's going to be there. But to your point, and back to Rick's comments regarding carbon management, like I think that what we're seeing right now is, the lack of CO2 infrastructure that exists, I think is a very real problem, right? I think there's been a lot of movement and a lot of investment in some policies in terms of Class 6 wells and what a carbon dioxide pipeline national infrastructure would look like. I think we're headed there, but I think that absent actual investment in these CO2 infrastructure projects and permitting reform is a big deal as well, right? Is making sure that we once we capture these CO2 molecules, they need to have a place to go, and we need to be able to secure them safely. So I would say that's probably the other component of this. The flip side of the coin is investing in that and making sure that as we scale up these technologies, that we're also looking at what that infrastructure looks like that's needed to be able to support that. Because when projects are being planned and being developed, it's not they're not done in silos. It's actually the cost of the actual project takes into account capturing, sequestering, or transport and then sequestering the CO2 molecules. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know my colleagues at DOE have been thinking a lot about that shared infrastructure, what hubs could look like to actually help there be shared infrastructure across different industrial plants. And I think that's a really important nut for us to crack. Rick, Armando just talked a little bit about permitting reform. I know this is something that you think a lot about. Any thoughts on what you hope to see there, or momentum on that?
Yeah, and first I'm just going to add a little color to the question of financing and note that one of the ways that the United States has engaged globally on these questions, and it cuts across much more than just industrial, but it includes industrial, is by encouraging multilateral development banks to lean into energy transition investments and broader investments. And we are encouraged by the response we're seeing from the multilateral development banks. You saw them come out earlier here with a really forward-leaning look at what can be done on climate mitigating investments, for that matter, adaptation investments, through the multilateral development banks. And I'll give one very specific example and then come to your other question. So I think on the clean technology funds managed by the World Bank, there's a $568 million window that's available for a variety of purposes, but one of the ways that we're encouraging that to get put to work is on things like electrification, efficiency, and the like in a diverse set of countries for the industrial sector. That's just one example among many. I think the broader point is that the multilateral development banks are really stepping up on climate finance, and that can and needs to include industrial electrification, industrial process shifts, industrial efficiency, and other transformation across a wide range of countries, from India to Indonesia, you name it. And your other question was?
On permitting reform.
Permitting reform. I'll start with an anecdote. Back in 2012, I was in the Obama-Biden White House, and one of the things I was asked to do was to try to work through getting a set of transmission lines kind of unstuck and permitted. I'm not going to name names on this, but just to say that the one that I put the most into in terms of trying to make it happen, and lots and lots of energy interagency and elevation of the effort, is just now, kind of 12 years later, kind of getting built. And That's not going to work. We do need a way to move faster. There's an extraordinary, I don't know the numbers, Annie, you probably do, or someone else. There's an extraordinary queue of renewables projects ready to go in the United States in principle, but they're pending the interconnect and the transmission, the infrastructure. So it's going to be essential to find a way forward on that, and exactly how that's going to happen is probably not for me to manage in the next 4 years, but it does need to happen. And I think there's a growing bipartisan understanding of that. Yeah. And so I'm hopeful that it can get done. I certainly see it as absolutely imperative for the U.S. to hit the kind of pace that's required for energy transition and broader climate transition. We've got to be building clean things and fast.
Fantastic. Absolutely. To sort of build off of Rick's point, his call to action, build clean things, build them quickly. Helen and Armando, I'm going to ask you each, what is one concrete thing, one concrete action you would hope to see taken in the next 12 months to accelerate the decarbonization of industry? And Helen, I'll start with you.
I think about this as go and grow, right? Like the companies and our customers and others in the space, our competitors, others in the space, our suppliers even, are kind of getting started in their journey, in the sustainability journey. And so, don't be intimidated, get started and grow, right? And there's lots of things you can do around the space. And, I think that is important for stakeholders that can really make this happen and really benefit from this and their communities to get started.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
You stole the words out of my mouth. That's
exactly
Armando. What I was going to say. Yeah, I think, and to Helen's point as well, right? I think continuity is something that's going to be needed. I think we need a clear set of regulations that, that are proposed, and then I think we need to make sure that, that we're not, switching that. I think we need to make sure that, we're, again, it's not sound like a broken record, but I think that's the one piece. And then to your point about, not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, the very reality is that, some of these technologies, we do have to demonstrate them. That's what it's in the name, right? We demonstrate them, we scale them up, we mature them, we make them more efficient, and then we keep progressing. And I think that recognizing what those ready now technologies are and where they're available and getting them deployed swiftly, I think is key, because getting out on the market and establishing these markets should be sort of the primary reason of what we're trying to do here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to seeing what learnings come out of the projects that actually Deputy Secretary Turk was mentioning from the industrial demonstration program at DOE. I know that's a lot of the exciting technologies that we've been talking about, hydrogen, CCUS, and seeing how those projects grow and what our learnings are. Rick, it's not a secret that there will be a change of administration coming up. I'm not going to ask you about that specifically, but I do want to ask you, what is something that gives you optimism about the future of American manufacturing and industry and decarbonizing that in a way that's clean and competitive?
Well, I'll just cite to what I've already said with regard to the durability and predictability of the suite of tax credits, technology neutral tax credits for the power sector that include CCUS and nuclear as a core solution for clean power in the United States, in addition to renewables, growing sense of impetus to get something done on permitting reform to unlock all that we need, the hydrogen, the CCUS, et cetera. That is a strong foundation. The other thing I'll mention is that there's been various analyses done, I believe, by some of the McKinseys and BCGs of the world that have pointed out something that I think is important, which is the United States has a tremendous set of resources on the renewable side. We have extraordinary space and potential for solar. We have tremendous wind potential, both onshore and offshore. We have tremendous geothermal potential. And we also have great pore space for carbon capture, utilization, and storage, or really storage in this case. in addition, we start from a relatively strong positioning because our kind of core fossil feedstock for our industry is natural gas, not coal. So there are many ways in which the United States starts with a running start. There are many ways in which there's now a kind of durable bipartisan basis for full transformation of the industrial sector in place. And I think there's growing consensus on a bipartisan basis about what is needed on the permitting side and otherwise in order for the United States to be a key part of the kind of global industrial transformation that needs to happen. I'll say one more thing, which is for all governments, certainly all major economies, to have the political support domestically to carry forward with a full energy transition does require that includes manufacturing and industry in each respective country. And it can't be the case that a key sector like manufacturing and industry is overly concentrated globally, geographically. Every country needs to have some part of the pie. And so I think we're seeing countries trying to work towards that diversification of supply chains and manufacturing, and I think there's some real prospect for that to continue to be the case, maybe above all in the United States, but also more broadly than that.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we're probably nearing time because we got a slightly later start, but Helen or Armando, if either of you have things that make you optimistic from the private sector perspective as you're looking forward, thinking about the next 12 months or even the longer term that you want to sort of throw into the pot, please, over to you.
I think again, our customers are volunteers, and they're buying these technologies today. And I think as they're proven and people get wind, they start to hear about these things, that they will, they'll continue to advance, and the uptake will increase. And so I think that is encouraging. And again, I think this is, it's good for business, it's good for communities, it's kind of a win-win-win-win-win all around. And so I think that is an encouraging piece.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I think that the fact that there's demand there for these technologies really shows and signals to sort of where our customers are trying to go in terms of the energy transition. And I think that, there is willingness, I think, from, bipartisan support, et cetera, for all of this, right? Because at the end of the day, we are trying to just, sort of decarbonize our industrial processes, the energy sector, the transport sector, and I think that's needed. And so there is demand there. And so I think that's pretty uplifting, when you think about that. So.
Fantastic. Armando, Helen, Rick, thank you so much. If I could give just a closing thought on this. The genesis for this event was to introduce the national blueprint for a clean and competitive industrial sector. And I think one of the things that makes me feel optimistic about the industrial transition is that while it is incredibly complicated to abate, as Rick was mentioning, and this is across a lot of sectors, and there are unique players and solutions across each of these sectors, we also have a real sense of what needs to be done here. We have a real sense of what the solution set looks like and what the levers are to keep this moving. And we are seeing the private sector step up to meet the moment that's been set by our regulatory landscape. So everyone please check out the blueprint. If you are a private sector player, think about how you can be a part of the solution set. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Get started. And thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
We loved having you join us at the U.S. Center. Please remember to return your headsets as you leave. Thank you for coming to the U.S. Center. We are now closed for lunch. Our next event will be at 1:15 p.m.